year, as you can tell, actually, it's more than just a European leadership conference. At this point, it's a global overseas leadership conference. I'm Marian Goodell, if you don't know that, and my title is CEO, which I like to call the Chief Engagement Officer, though I am leading the consolidated organization that is the Burning Man Project. And that includes what was Black Rock City LLC as an independent organization that's now a subsidiary of the Burning Man Project. Black Rock Arts Foundation is a subsidiary of the Burning Man Project. And Beurs van Berlage will soon become a program inside the Burning Man Project. And our endeavor costs about $33 million to do out in the world. And this year, we are focusing on 3 areas. The organization is working through a goals process right now. We actually have 70 employees. I don't know if you all know this. And there's 3 main areas. One is the event production. So Black Rock City is still the mothership. Black Rock City is where the culture was born. And for as long as we can keep Black Rock City alive and thriving, it's going to be the place that we will continue to nurture and provoke and learn about transformative experience. The other area is arts and civics. You heard me mention the Black Rock Arts Foundation and Burners Without Borders as they're coming closer in the organization. We're going to build a consolidated program area that has arts and civics together. Because as you know, if you've engaged with Burning Man culture, and that's why you're all here, it's almost impossible to separate it. You don't do just a piece of art. If you do art in a civic context and you engage people around it, that's what causes and brings people together and creates that experience of connectivity. So we're going to deepen that program. And the other area is the Global Leadership Network. We are putting our energy into those 3 areas, and that's a huge amount of work. So I want to talk about, of course, why we're all here. And there's 2 things I want to touch on. One is leadership, and one is scaling. Leadership is tough. I've been doing what I'm doing with Burning Man. I've been going for 20 years. I went to my 20th burn this year. This will be my 21st coming up. And I've been helping facilitate organizational change and Burning Man culture for 18 years. So I'm deeply aware of the challenges that you all face in your area. I may not be the one lonely person leading in a particular area. It's quite nice to actually have other compatriots. It may not have started when there's just 250 people like some of you, but I did start when there was no organization, there was no infrastructure, there was no budget to speak of. I had another job. And together, collaboratively with others that were on the same mission together, we chose leadership around Burning Man culture over ourselves. We chose being in service for something that was more important, something that was transformative. We chose that over our individual needs. But it took a long time, and it doesn't happen overnight. And part of what the Burning Man Project and the organization and those of us that are leaders from San Francisco that have been doing this for a long time want to try to do is really emphasize that we're here to collaborate with you. This is totally hard work. I absolutely feel you and I hear you. We all do. That's the voice that we constantly hear. It's not easy to make events happen. It's not easy to make things happen out in the community that aren't events. It's not easy to manage the 10 principles and put them into your community. Radical inclusion is certainly a hard one. It is. Decommodification isn't easy to always interpret when in fact we need the funds to do the beautiful work that we all want to do. We want to create ecosystems. Money is really freedom for us, for all of us to do the work we need to do. But we're here together. This is leadership. That's why we call this a leadership conference. That's why we call the Global Leadership Conference, the GLC in San Francisco, the GLC. It used to be called a summit. But we really wanted to talk more about leadership. And I really want to emphasize that, as Megan said to me, she said, this is a growing group of leaders, which is great. Sometimes we're in a group where there's tired leaders or exhausted leaders. And you may be some of that. But if we're doing this together, you're not alone. And I mean that really deeply. Reach out for advice to others. Reach out for advice from the organization. Our intention really for leadership with you all is to do it collaboratively, but to do it really firmly. What we have done is grown the culture. And we really want to scale and we need to scale. Black Rock City can have no more people this year than it had last year, which was no more than the year before, which is incredibly painful. It means the nonprofit is actually having to go out and make asks and raise money in a traditional nonprofit way, which we're learning from. It's a perfect challenge for us because we're doing the storytelling. And Marcel reminded me that last year I ended my, hi Marcel, that I ended my talk about storytelling, and we are all storytellers. And that's part of our leadership role, is to tell the story of who we are and to listen, but also to tell who we are collectively and what we're doing in the world, and to do it by example. Tell the stories of the magic that happens when you bring people together, not just the magic that you're doing. We need to scale this, and I know it's nerve-wracking. And I know some of you have an event, you might have 150 people or 250 people, and that's sort of enough for you. We're gonna have to work together and get brave and push those boundaries a little bit. And you'll hear it from the organization, and you might even hear it from each other. But if we want this culture to go beyond Black Rock City, we're gonna have to do some of the things that we did in 2002 and 2003 and 2004, when we watched Burning Man, Black Rock City, go from 15,000 people to 25,000 people, and that was scary. And I know that going from 1,500 people to 2,500 people is scary. But we're here to do it together. And it's magical. And the thing about being in Europe that for me is really inspiring and also terrifying is that the politics and the intensity of what's happening here in different countries is nearly overwhelming for me to imagine. I hear about protests in Budapest. I hear about changes happening, of course, in Russia. I know that there's challenges in Israel. But Burning Man culture, we know this, can change the world. It sends shivers down my spine to think about it. I'm not super hippy-dippy at all. I was raised a right-wing Republican Catholic. And I have scientists for sisters. So from a really practical standpoint, I'm very certain that connecting creatively with other human beings brings something out in yourself that's more authentic and makes you feel more real and more connected. And that is what can change the way we all look at each other and what we can do on this planet. So, let me also, I want to open it up for questions, but I also wanted to introduce the next group. So,
do you want to acknowledge recent events, elephants?
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do too, but that's why I wanted to open up for questions.
Okay.
Okay, so Megan wanted me to also touch on the fact that I'm so involved in thinking about the future and beyond Black Rock City that there are things that went on in Black Rock City last year. There are strong feelings about the plug-and-play concepts, and there are some hot topics about the culture in Black Rock City. And what was the organization doing about things, and what is our stand on them? Thank you. It's a little dry in here. A little dry in the Netherlands. There are challenges in Black Rock City, and we are absolutely committed to the values, the core values of what is Burning Man. And it might take us some time to make decisions and to respond out publicly, but that's because we're doing it very cautiously and carefully. And for all of you that are leaders and you find yourself in a challenging moment and you're trying to figure out what to do, you might wait, you might consult others, you might look at what the results of a decision might be, and that's what we've been doing. So there's a bit of an elephant in the room about plug and play and maybe the board member that works with us. But our organization is very, very committed, and our board members are very committed. Kay was introduced a minute ago, but she's probably still recovering from jet lag, and we'll see her soon. If you've not met Kay Morrison, she's a Burning Man Project board member. So if you don't feel free to ask me questions about the composition of the board and what we're doing and what our goals are, feel free to ask Kay. That's one of the reasons why she's here. And there's 4 metas here, so that if you also feel like you want more information to keep floating up, you can also approach another meta and ask them. Peter Durand, he has a role with communications. He's chosen to be a liaison between Burning Man's HQ communications department and the regional network. And he and the other metas have encouraged the organization to float ideas out into the regionals before we post them publicly. So your voices are very important. When you have thoughts and you have feelings about what the organization's doing and how it affects your work in the world, absolutely want to hear from you. I do want you to be patient and imagine what it would be like if you were in the same position with an 18-member board running a $32 million business, trying to create a movement, a cultural movement in the world. You would take each step carefully. And someone said to me the other day that from friction comes polish. And I thought that was a really great way to look at it. Over my 18 years, I really can't think of any of our processes ever that was simple, at all. But we've polished them to the point that we're very confident in particular areas. And when a new one comes up, we weigh carefully what the ramifications are of a change or a decision or a direction. And that's good leadership, particularly if you're stewarding a culture. So I want to take some questions, if there are any, and then I want to introduce the next group and talk about why we're here in Amsterdam. Last year there were questions. You must have some. Hi, Ray.
Hello, I'm Ray. I'm from Midburn. As Burning Man is moving into a non-profit, what is the strategy for collaboration with other non-profits or addressing it to public funding?
I knew you'd ask me that. We absolutely have a strategy to work with other nonprofits. In fact, one of the parts that we're working on directly related to the regional network is finding the right kind of affiliations and looking at and creating the strongest affiliations. We're asked in the United States almost weekly to affiliate with either a brand or a company or a nonprofit. And often it's really easy to look and say, this is not quite the right decision. When we find an organization that has values and an approach and an intention like ours, we do the work to move as far forward as we can to create an affiliation. You all are actually in the best position to create nonprofits or entities that we want to affiliate with. And we're not just talking about affiliating with your event. Doing an official event is one thing, but having an affiliated nonprofit or an affiliated organization is going to be the deepest kind of affiliation we can make with each other. It's likely to help from an economic standpoint. If we do it right, we'll create what I would call an ecosystem to help support everybody, particularly in any particular area. So that's the best answer I can give you. Yeah. Yep.
I want to, Leo Salman from Vienna, Austria.
Hi.
I want to follow up on that. Currently, we have a contract, like I have a contract with you guys because I'm in a regional contact. We have a contract with you for the Vienna Burning Ball. There are some details connected to that, but and we have a non-profit. We have what's called the Austrian Burners Cultural Association, which we use to run the event. So in the future, it would be possible to have a contract between, if you talk about affiliation, between like the Austrian burners, and that could be the French burners too, or the Dutch burners. I know that you have associations, for example, around nowhere. That we have an ongoing contract between the legal bodies we form and your legal bodies. Is this what you imply?
Yes. Yeah, Ray Allen, raise your hand again. So, so one of the reasons why Ray Allen is here is he's going to do a presentation, but Megan and I thought it would be a perfect year for Ray to come. Ray doesn't often travel, rarely, for Burning Man, because he's got a team in San Francisco, and government relations and permit issues and everything kind of comes on his plate. He used to be a one-man band. He now has, there's 4 in your staff now, right? And Ray has been working with, and the Dutch Burners are going to talk to you about a relationship with the Dutch Burners and their nonprofit. When any of you come to us with ideas that are so like ours and parallel with ours, you're more likely to find it really easy for us to create that relationship. The further apart we are, the more we have to work. Right now, we don't have the bandwidth necessarily or the desire to change where your momentum might already be. We're really hoping that we're going to emulate each other in a way that makes those relationships easy to make. So I would urge you to talk to Ray. Yeah. You'll see it, and you saw last year in Daniel's presentation, and I know that you'll see in his for this year, where they're at in that relationship with us. And Ray and his Israel folks, of which there's about 6 or 8 of you guys in different forms doing your production and part of developing your organization. And our organization's heard from almost all of them recently, asking for help. And asking for very specific help and emulating some of the things that we're doing. And we're not against you doing your own thing, your own way, by any stretch. But the closer you are to doing similar to what we're doing, and in parallel, the more we trust, because we've done that before. So we know certain structures work, we know certain leadership theories work, and we know that certain programs work. That's why we chose them, because we're in the business now of setting the systems up and letting them run. I don't want to be running an organization with 250 people with twice as much money and income. I'd rather decentralize this so that you're engaged and you're creating connectivity and culture out in the world. But to do that, we actually have to be mimicking each other in just the right ways. So thank you for your question, Austria. Absolutely would love to be in partnership with you. Thank you. Anybody else? No more? That makes me so happy. Well, I'm going to be here through the weekend, and so I look forward to you guys asking me any questions you want. I particularly enjoy giving feedback and inspiring you in challenges around leadership and frustrations that you might encounter in doing the work that you're doing. I also like talking about a number of other things, including when you're creating business entities and the challenges around collaborating and finding good collaborators. It's hard to create entities and teams that are aligned, but we have really good values for us all to align around. So I encourage you to do everything you can to create really strong communities. So speaking of strong communities and leadership, I want to introduce Daniel and Gabby. But first I want to really touch on why we're in Amsterdam. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I keep trying to figure it out. It was 2011? It was 2011, so coming up on 4 years ago. It seems like longer than that, but that's why we're here. Amsterdam and Holland and the whole team, of which includes all of the leaders that you've seen help produce this event, have come together fairly quickly and have brought community, have brought a core project, have begun to create an entity, and have got a leadership conference here because they've gone through some challenges. And they are a really good example of a team that has looked towards a bigger picture, has worked through challenges of leadership, and has actually approached the organization with the deepest kind of affiliation that we've seen yet. And I want to thank all of you, as I did last year. You're a fantastic bunch. I've really enjoyed meeting each of you. I enjoyed the day we spent on the playa a couple of years ago getting to know each other. Louisa Bird, who is not in the midst now but helped build the group also, who's in Britain at this point. This group and why we're here is because of an intention to bring culture, particularly to Holland, which is ripe for connectivity and creativity and collaboration. And I want to introduce Daniel and Gabby, if you can come up and tell your story and where you guys are at in your development. I want to.
No, I think I'm okay.
It's pretty good projecting. The room carries pretty well. I want to thank the entire Amsterdam, Holland, Dutch team for bringing us all here. We're here for the strength of your leadership. One of the group asked me last night, well, how can we bring it to my town? This should be your incentive, to build a team. We can't come somewhere if you've only got 5 or 6 or even 12 people. They have probably several thousand people in Holland and several hundred that are active. So I'll take it away.